Hello, Belle and Jack and G. Is everyone ready to listen to the next chapter? This is chapter 17, Serena. Remember Serena? Yeah. Serena is Lewis's girlfriend. During the next 10 weeks, that was in Philadelphia, Lewis got rich. He went every evening except Sundays to the nightclub and played his trumpet for the customers. He didn't care for the job at all. The place was big and crowded and noisy, and everyone seemed to be talking too loud and eating too much and drinking too much. Most birds like to go to sleep when the sun goes down. They don't want to stay up half the night entertaining people. But Lewis, he was a musician, and musicians can't choose their working hours. They must work when their employer, their boss, wants them to work. Every Saturday night, Lewis connected his pay, $500. Mr. Lucas was always on hand to receive his agent's fee of 10% from Lewis. After Lewis had paid Mr. Lucas, he still had $450. And he'd put his money in his bag, hop into the taxi cab, and return to Bird Lake, arriving to the Bird Lake around 3 a.m., way dark in the middle of the night. His money bag grew so big and so stuffed with money, Lewis was beginning to worry. On Sunday afternoons, if the weather was good, crowds of people would gather on the shores of Bird Lake, and Lewis would stand on the island in the middle of the lake and give a concert. This became such a popular event in Philadelphia, when there isn't much going on Sundays. Lewis took the concert very seriously. By playing for people, he was earning the right to remain free and not have his wings clipped so he couldn't fly. He was always at his best on Sundays. Instead of playing jazz and rock and folk and country and western, he would play selections from some of the greatest composers, Beethoven and Mozart and Bach, music he learned to by listening to records at Camp Couscous. That's pretty cool. Lewis also liked the music of George Gershwin and Stephen Foster. When he played Summertime from Porgy and Bess, the people of Philadelphia thought that it was the most thrilling music that they had ever heard. Lewis was considered so good on the trumpet that he was invited to make a guest appearance with the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra. One day, a week before Christmas, a great storm came up. The sky grew dark and the wind blew. It made a whining, whistling noise, and windows rattled. Shutters came off their hinges, and old newspapers and candy wrappers were picked up by the wind and scattered all over the place like confetti. Many of the creatures at the zoo became very uneasy and restless. Over at the elephant house, the elephants trumpeted in alarm, and the lions roared and paced back and forth, and the birds screamed. The keepers rushed here and there, shutting doors and windows, trying to make everything secure against the awful winds. The waters of Bird Lake were ruffled by the mighty strong winds, and for a while the lake looked like a small ocean. Many of the water birds sought protection on the island where Lewis was. Lewis rode out the gale on the lake on the other side of the island. He faced the wind and kept paddling with his feet. His eyes were bright with wonder and the strength of the blast. Suddenly he saw an object in the sky. It was coming down out of the clouds. First he couldn't make out what it was. Maybe it's an airplane, he thought. Then he realized, gee, it's a large white bird, struggling desperately to coming in for a landing against the wind, and its wings were beating rapidly. Well, in a moment it splashed down and flopped ashore and laid out. Oh, Swift was so tired. Lewis stared and stared, and then he looked again. It looks like a swan, he thought. It was a swan. It looks like a trumpeter swan, he thought, and it was a trumpeter swan. My goodness, Louis said to himself, it looks like Serena. She's here at last. My prayers have been answered. It's a dream come true. Louis was right. Serena, the swan of his desiring, had been caught by the fierce storm and blown all the way across America. All the way from where? Montana, the Red Rocks Reservoir. When she looked down and saw Bird Lake, she ended her flight, almost dead from exhaustion. She was pooped. Louis was tempted to rush right over to her, but he thought, no, that would be a mistake. She is in no condition at the moment to be received by the depth of my perception, affection, and the extent of my love. Papa ought to put his glasses on first, huh? She is too pooped. I will wait until she gets herself all fixed up, and then I will renew our acquaintance and make myself known to her. Louis did not go to his job that night. The weather was too bad. All night he stayed awake, keeping watch, a slight distance from his beloved Serena. Here she is. See her there? She's fixing herself in the bushes. And that's Louis way down at the end, looking around the bushes, looking at her. Huh? Louis did not go to his job, and he stayed awake. When the morning came, the wind subsided, the skies cleared, and the lake was very calm. The storm was over, and Serena woke up. She was still exhausted and very mussy. Her feathers were all over the place. Louis stayed away from her. I'll just wait, he thought. When in love, one must take risks. But I'm not going to risk everything with a bird who is too tired to see straight. I won't hurry and I won't worry. Back home on Upper Red Rock Lake, I was without a voice. She ignored me because I could not tell her of my love. Now, thanks to my brave father, I have a trumpet. Through the power of music, I will impress her with the intensity of my love and the strength of my devotion. She will hear me say, "Go-go." I'll tell her I love her in a language that anybody can understand, the language of music. She will hear the trumpet of the swan, and she will be mine. At least I hope she will. Usually, if a strange bird appeared on Bird Lake, one of the bird keepers would report his arrival to the head man in charge of birds, whose office was in the birdhouse, and the head man would give the order to have the new bird pinioned, have one of his wings clipped. But today, the keeper who usually tended the waterfowl was sick. He had a cold and the flu, so he didn't come to work, and no one noticed that a new trumpeter swan, Serena, had arrived. Serena was being very quiet. She was not attracting any attention. She was now one of 5 trumpeters on the lake. Originally there were 3: Curiosity, Felicity, and Apathy. And now Louis and Serena. Toward the end of the afternoon, Serena woke up and she looked around. She had a bite to eat, took a little bath, which is easy for a swan. Then walked out of the water and stood for a long time, fluffing up her feathers, and she felt much better. And when her feathers were all cleaned and smoothed out, she looked extremely beautiful, stately and serene and graceful and very feminine, a beautiful looking swan. Louis trembled when he saw how truly lovely she was. He was again tempted to swim over and say, "Cuckoo," and see if she remembered him. But he had a better idea. There is no hurry, he thought. She's not going to leave Philadelphia tonight. I'll go to my job, and when I get back from work, I shall sleep near her through the night. And just at daylight, I'll awaken her with the song of love by my trumpet. She'll be drowsy, and the sound of the trumpet will enter her sleepy brain and overcome her with emotion. My trumpet will be the first sound she hears. I will be irresistible. I will be the first thing she sees when she opened her eyes, and she will love me from that moment on. Lewis was satisfied with this plan and began to make preparations. He swam ashore, removed his things, hid them under the bush, and returned to the water where he fed and bathed, fixed his feathers. He wanted to look his best next morning. And then he drifted around for a while, thinking of all the songs he liked, trying to decide which one to wake up Serena in the morning. He finally decided to play Beautiful Dreamer, Wake Unto Me. He always loved that song. It was sad, but it was sweet. She will be a beautiful dreamer, thought Lewis, and she will wake unto me. The song fits the situation perfectly. He was determined to play the song better than he ever had before. It was one of his best numbers, and he really knew how to play it very well. Once when he played at the Sunday concert, a music critic from the Philadelphia newspaper heard him, and the next morning the paper said, "Some of his notes are like jewels held up to the light. The emotion he transmits is clean and pure and sustained." Lewis had memorized that statement. He was very proud of it. Now he was anxious for morning to come, but he still had his job at the nightclub to go to. He knew the night would be long, and he wouldn't be able to sleep. Lewis swam ashore and picked up all his things. When he looked under the bush, he received a terrible jolt. His medal was there, his slate was there, his chalk pencil was there, his money bag was there. But where was his trumpet? His trumpet was gone. Poor Lewis, his heart almost stopped. "Oh no," he said, "oh no, without his trumpet, his whole life would be ruined, and his plans for the future would collapse." He was frantic, and he was fearful. And he dashed back into the water, and he looked up and down the lake. Far off he saw a small wood duck that seemed to have something shiny in its mouth. It was a trumpet, all right. The duck was trying to play it. Lewis was furious. He skimmed down the lake as fast as he was going, faster than he ever had, and he swam straight for the duck, knocked him on the head, and grabbed his precious trumpet. The duck fainted. Lewis wiped the horn, cleaned it up, and hung it around his neck where it belonged. There's Lewis with his trumpet. See him with his trumpet. There we go. Now he was ready. Let the night come. Let the hours pass. Let morning come when my beautiful dreamer wakes unto me. Well, night came at last. 9 o'clock came. Lewis went off to work, riding in the cab. The zoo got very quiet. The visitors all gone home. Many of the animals snoozed or snored. A few of them, the great cats, the raccoon, the armadillo, the ones that enjoyed the nighttime, walked around and became restless. Bird Lake was very dark. Most of the birds had tucked their heads under the wings and went to sleep. At one end of the lake, the three captive swans, Curiosity, Felicity, and Apathy, were already asleep. Near the island, the beautiful Serena was fast asleep and dreaming, her long white neck folded neatly under her wing, and her head rested on her soft feathers. Lewis got home from work at 2 o'clock in the morning, a little early for Lewis. He flew over to the low fence, splashed down in the water near Serena, making as little noise as possible. He did not try to sleep. The night was beautiful, as the nights are just before Christmas. Clouds drifted across the sky in endless procession, partially hiding the stars in the sky. Lewis watched the clouds, watched Serena as she slept, and waited for daylight to come, hour after hour after hour. At last, a faint light shone in the east as the sun was rising. Soon the creatures would be stirring and morning would be here. This is my moment, thought Lewis. The time has come for me to wake my true love, Serena. He placed himself directly in front of Serena, and he raised the trumpet to his beak. He tilted his head The horn pointed slightly upward toward the sky, where the first light of day was showing. He began his song. Beautiful dreamer, he played, wake unto me. The first 3 or 4 notes were played very softly. Then as the song progressed, the sound increased and the light in the sky grew brighter. Each note was like a jewel held up to the light, just like the newspaper man said. The sound of Lewis's trumpet had never been heard before at this hour in the zoo, and the sound seemed to fill the whole world of buildings and animals and trees and shrubs and plants and dens and cages. Sleepy bears dozing in their grotto listened. Foxes hiding in their dens listened to the sweet and dreamy sound of the horn blown at the coming of light. In the lion house, the great cats heard it. In the monkey house, the old baboon listened. What was going on? And here's all the animals in their cages in the zoo, and they're all listening to Lewis. The hippo heard, the seal heard in his tank, and the gray wolf heard, and the yak in his cage, the badger and the coon and the ring-tailed coyote and the skunk and the weasel and the otter and the llama and the dromedary and the white-tailed deer all listened and heard, and they listened with their ears up. The rabbit heard, the beaver heard, the snake, who has no ears, he heard, he felt it. The wallaby, the possum, the anteater, the armadillo, the peafowl, the pigeon, the bowbird, the cockatoo, the fly. We get it, everybody heard. Philadelphia people waking up from their sound in their bedrooms where their windows were open, they heard him playing. Not one person who heard the song realized that this was the moment of triumph for a young swan who had loved Serena and was playing a song to her. Lewis was not thinking about his large audience of animals and people. His mind was not on the bears and the buffaloes and the lizards and the hawks and the owls and the people in their bedrooms. His mind was on one thing. It was on Serena, the swan of his choice, the beautiful dreamer. He played for her and for her alone. At the first note from his trumpet, she awoke. She raised her head from under her wing, and her neck straightened until her head was held fully high. What she saw filled her with amazement. She gazed straight at Lewis. At first, she could hardly remember where she was. She was so tired still. Directly in front of her, she saw a handsome young male swan, a cob of noble proportions. Held against his mouth was this strange brass instrument, something she had never seen before. And from this strange instrument came sounds that made her tremble with joy and with love. As the song went on, as the light grew stronger in the sky, she fell hopelessly in love with this bold trumpeter who had awakened her from her dreams. The dreams of night were gone, new dreams of day were upon her. She knew that she was full of sensations she never had before, feelings of delight and love. She had never seen a finer looking young cob. She had certainly seen any swan with so many personal possessions around his neck, and had never been so thrilled by a sound before in her whole life. Oh, she thought, oh my. Though the song ended, Lewis lowered his trumpet and bowed solemnly to Serena. You know how to bow? That's right. Then he raised his horn again and, "Go," he said. "Go," replied Serena. Go," said Lewis through his trumpet. Go," replied Serena. Each felt drawn to the other by a mysterious bond of love. Lewis swam rapidly around Serena. Then Serena swam rapidly around Lewis. This seemed to amuse them. Lewis dipped his neck and pumped it back and forth, and Serena dipped her neck and pumped it back and forth. We must have seen this on the lake, where the swans on your lake do this. Louis splashed a little water in the air, and Serena splashed a little water in the air. It was like a game. It was like love long lost for Serena. Louis decided to show off. I'll play her my own composition. The song that I made up by myself. The one that I made up for her at summer camp last year. And he raised his trumpet. Oh, ever in the greening spring, by bank and bough retiring, for love shall I be sorrowing, and swans of my desiring. And here's the picture of the two of them on the lake. Pretty cool, huh? Boy, this is a long chapter. The notes were clear and pure. They filled the zoo with beauty. If Serena had been in any doubt before, she no longer was. She succumbed to this charmer, this handsome musician, this rich and talented Cobb. Louis knew that his plan had succeeded. His beautiful dreamer had awakened her, and she'd wakened to him. Never again would they be parted. All the rest of their lives they would be together. Thoughts of small, quiet lakes in the woods, where the bushes were tall and the blackbirds sang, filled Louis's mind. Thoughts of springtime and nesting and little cygnets, oh, ever in the greening spring. Louis had been told once by his father what happened to deep-sea divers when they go far below the ocean, where the pressure is so great and the water is strange and mysterious. Sometimes they experience what's called rapture of the deep. Where are they going with this? They feel so compelled and peaceful and enchanted they never want to return to the surface. Louis's father had warned him about this. Always remember when you dive deep, he said, that this feeling of rapture can be harmful. No matter how wonderful you'll feel down there, don't ever forget to return to the surface where you can breathe again. Looking at Serena's, Louis thought to himself, I think love is like rapture of the deep. I feel so good, I just want to stay right where I am. I'm experiencing rapture of the deep, even though I'm right on top of the water. I have never felt so good, so peaceful, so excited, so happy, ambitious, and desirous. If love is like this on a cold day in December in the Philadelphia Zoo, imagine what it's going to be like in the spring on a remote lake in Canada. These were Louis's secret thoughts. He was the happiest bird alive. He was a real trumpeter swan at last. He knew how to say cuckoo, and he was very grateful to his father for helping with the trumpet. Cautiously, he placed his head across Serena's beautiful white neck. It seemed a very daring thing to do, but she seemed to like it. And then he backed away, and Serena swam toward him. She cautiously placed her head across his neck. It rested there for a moment, and then she swam away. What a darling thing, she thought. But he seems to like it. How pleasing to know that I have found an acceptable mate, a Cobb that I can love and respect, and a Cobb that appears not only musical but also quite wealthy. Look at all those things, said Serena to herself. Her eyes feasted on the trumpet, the slate, the chalk, the money bag, the life-saving medal. What a great Cobb, she thought. What a dressy-looking fella. They swam off together toward the other end of the lake where they could be alone. Then Louis, who needed some sleep, dozed off while Serena ate her breakfast and fixed her feathers up. Whew, that was a long one, huh?